The Royal Square stands at the heart of the royal city, an architectural marvel that has withstood the test of centuries. The square is vast, bordered by the ancient stone buildings of the royal palace on one side and towering monuments and statues dedicated to past monarchs on the other. Ornate fountains bubble with crystal clear water, and lush gardens overflow with vibrant flowers, their colors bursting against the backdrop of golden statues and marble columns. A massive banner flutters in the breeze, emblazoned with the royal crest, proclaiming the nation's loyalty to the crown. Today, the square is alive with the sounds of music, laughter, and celebration as the nation commemorates its royal heritage. Soldiers in bright uniforms march past, and people from all walks of life have gathered to witness the annual festivities. Vendors hawk everything from sweet pastries to national flags. The air is rich with the aroma of fresh bread and roasting meats, carried on the warm summer breeze. The sun casts long shadows on the cobblestones, and a sense of timelessness hangs in the air. This is a place of power, history, and royal pride. But beneath the surface of festivity, there is an unease, an undercurrent of tension that the city's grand architecture and displays of wealth cannot fully mask. Some in the crowd stand in silence, their eyes not on the entertainment, but on the symbol of the monarchy, the very institution that has governed their lives for generations. Whispers of dissent ripple through the crowd. People glance around nervously, knowing that the royal family has long been disconnected from the struggles of the common folk. The extravagant wealth of the monarchs, their lavish ceremonies, and their tight grip on power have become a source of growing frustration among those who feel forgotten and oppressed. Growing inequality and government corruption are issues that can no longer be ignored. Lena stands among them, blending in at first glance, her youthful face concealing a storm of emotions. She feels the crowd's mixed energy. Some are carefree, caught up in the holiday spirit, while others walk with clenched jaws, the weight of the day pressing down on them. Lena feels it too, the anger, the desperation. But today is different. Today, she is no longer a silent observer. She has come to make a statement. Lena clutches a simple piece of cardboard in her hands, the words written in bold black ink, "The crown is corruption." She knows this act will be dangerous, but it is something she must do. This is her fight. It is not just for herself, but for her people. Her father's life was ruined by the monarchy, unjustly imprisoned years ago, a victim of political maneuvering and greed. She has been fighting for justice ever since. With her heart pounding in her chest, Lena steps forward, out of the shadow of the statues of long-dead kings. She feels the stares of the people around her, some curious, others already muttering about the boldness of her actions. She lifts the sign high above her head and shouts, "Down with the monarchy!" Across the square, Sergeant Elias moves with military precision, his tall figure cloaked in the heavy armor of the Royal Guard. His expression is unreadable, a mask of discipline that betrays nothing of the inner conflict that often stirs within him. His movements are fluid, accustomed to the weight of the royal insignia he carries, as his boots make a soft thud on the cobblestones. He has spent nearly a decade in the Royal Guard, a position of high honor that has shaped his entire existence. His family is fiercely loyal to the crown. His father was a soldier in the Guard, as was his grandfather. To Elias, serving the monarchy has always been a matter of duty, maintaining order and protecting the stability of the nation. The Royal Guard is meant to be a symbol of strength, a force of justice, and the elite protectors of the royal family. But today, something feels different in the air of the square. Elias can sense it, an unease that does not belong in a place so steeped in tradition and power. As he surveys the crowd, he notices the faces of the people more sharply than usual. Their eyes seem distant, angry even, as if they see past the celebration and into something darker, something they can no longer ignore. Elias performs his duty without question, just as he always has. His role is simple: ensure the safety of the royal family and prevent any disruptions during the national celebration. The familiar tension of responsibility sits in his chest like a heavy weight, but his body moves automatically, his eyes scanning the crowd, alert for any sign of trouble. Yet, he cannot shake the feeling that something is changing. Each year, the celebrations have felt less like moments of joy and more like a display, a spectacle designed to remind the people of the power that rules over them. He has seen it firsthand, the stark divide between the grandeur of the monarchy and the daily struggles of the common folk. His conscience occasionally tugs at him when he passes through the poorer districts of the city, where children play in the streets surrounded by dilapidated buildings, while the royal palace looms high above them. He is not naive. He knows the crown is far from perfect. He has seen the corruption, the way the monarchy makes deals with the elite with foreign powers, while the people are left to fight for scraps. But Elias is also loyal, loyal to the crown, loyal to the life that the royal family has provided him and his family. What would his life be without the protection of this system? What would become of the nation if it fell? Still, on this particular day, as he moves through the crowd, he feels something shift within him. The chatter seems louder, more pointed than usual. The people's eyes are not filled with admiration. They are filled with something else, something he is not entirely ready to confront. Elias spots Lena in the crowd, holding up a sign that reads, "The crown is corruption." His eyes narrow instinctively. This kind of defiance is dangerous. He cannot allow it to spread. He signals to his fellow guards with a quick motion, his lips set in a firm line. There is no time to waste. Disruptions cannot be allowed, especially not today of all days. As he starts making his way toward her, something unexpected happens. He hesitates for just a moment. Her eyes meet his, and for a split second, Elias feels a strange connection. A sense that this is not just some random protest, but a challenge that cuts to the heart of something much deeper. It is an uncomfortable feeling, one he has never allowed himself to experience before. But duty calls. With the square now filled with the sound of Lena's defiant shouts, Elias quickens his pace. The tension between his instincts and his duties has never been clearer. The protest has begun, and so has the chase. Lena's voice cuts through the music and chatter like a thunderclap on a sunny day. She raises the cardboard sign high above her head, its bold message visible to all. "Shh! The crown is corruption." Just a few words, yet they carry the weight of a generation's frustration, anger, betrayal, and the desperate longing for change. At first, no one reacts. The crowd is too absorbed in the holiday celebrations to pay attention to a lone protester. But as Lena's voice rings out again, louder this time, the shift begins. "Down with the monarchy!" Her words slice through the air like a blade. Some in the crowd pause, their eyes drawn to the sign. Others glance over their shoulders, nervous but intrigued. Lena's heart pounds. This is it, the moment she has been waiting for. It's a risk. She knows the consequences, but there is no turning back now. Her voice rises again, defiance sharpening her tone, daring anyone to ignore her. The people around her begin to stir. A few faces turn in her direction, whispering to each other, their eyes flicking nervously to the nearby guards. A murmur ripples through the crowd. The monarchy's grip is unyielding, but for some, it has become too much to bear. There's a flicker of understanding, as if they too have been waiting for this spark. A young man near her mutters, "She's brave, but it'll never work." An older woman, shaking her head, whispers under her breath, "They'll arrest her for this." But there's something else. Some people nod, their expressions hardening, as if her voice echoes their own quiet frustrations. The atmosphere in the square shifts. What was once celebratory and carefree is now tense, charged with the electric hum of defiance. Lena doesn't see it, but Elias does. From his position at a distance, he has been watching, noticing the subtle shifts in the crowd and sensing the tension rising beneath the surface. The moment Lena shouts her message, his instincts kick in, honed from years of training. He's prepared for moments like this, when a single spark could ignite chaos. A protest in the middle of the royal celebration is not just an inconvenience. It's a direct challenge to the monarchy's power, a threat to the order he has sworn to protect. Without hesitation, Elias raises his hand, signaling to the other guards stationed around the square. His eyes narrow as he focuses on Lena, the boldness of her act striking something inside him he can't quite define. He's seen protests before, but this feels different. Something about her fiery conviction is almost magnetic. But there's no time for empathy, no space for hesitation. He pushes the thought away and focuses on his duty. The first guard, a younger soldier, is already moving toward Lena, the order clear in his eyes. subdue and arrest. He strides forward with urgency, but Elias, ever tactical, already sees the situation escalating faster than anticipated. He notices the ripple of unease spreading through the crowd, how people are beginning to cluster in small groups, whispering, watching. This protest has the potential to become a full-fledged confrontation. Elias motions for the other guards to move in. The royal guard will not let this rebellion spread. The sound of armored boots clicking against the cobblestones grows louder as they close in. Lena doesn't need to see them to feel the guards approaching. Her heart skips a beat as she spots the first soldier making his way toward her, his hand already reaching for his baton. Adrenaline floods her body, and without thinking, she turns and bolts, her legs propelling her forward like a sudden surge of electricity. The crowd around her gasps, some stumbling back in shock, others calling out in confusion. Panic claws at her chest, but there is something else too, a fierce, burning fire that drives her forward, telling her to keep running no matter the cost. She pushes past people, the weight of her actions sinking in. The chase has begun. For a brief moment, time feels as though it's stretching, warping. Lena is running, yet every step seems to drag in slow motion. She hears the thud of boots behind her as the first guard tries to gain ground, but she's faster, more agile. The space between them closes with every breath she takes. Her mind is a blur of thoughts. Escape. Get away. Reach the alley. Lose them. Lena's breath comes in sharp gasps, her legs burning as she pushes through the crowd. The chaos is deafening now, the sound of voices shouting, the scrape of her shoes on the cobblestones, the clink of armor as the royal guard moves in pursuit. She ducks behind a fruit cart, knocking over apples, sending them rolling into the crowd, but she doesn't stop to look back. The world around her seems to blur, reduced to the beat of her racing heart and the deafening sound of her feet slapping the pavement. She hears the guard shout, "Stop her!" And that's when she knows there's no going back now. She can't let herself be caught, not today, not after everything that has led her here. Her father's wrongful imprisonment, the injustice, the inequality. This moment is her reckoning, and she'll be damned if she lets the royal guard quash it without a fight. As she dodges left and right, she briefly catches sight of Elias, his figure tall and commanding amidst the confusion. He moves with precision, his eyes fixed on her, and though their gazes don't meet directly, she feels it, the weight of his focus on her, like a silent challenge. Elias knows what she's doing, but he doesn't know why. Lena's body is starting to feel like it's on fire, her chest heaving with each breath, her muscles screaming for respite, but she doesn't dare slow down. She's too close now. The stakes are too high. She pushes past a group of startled onlookers, her fingers brushing against their clothes as she whips through the crowd, but they're gaining on her. Another guard has joined the chase, and the pressure is building. Her escape route, the narrow alleyway ahead, looks farther away than ever. As Elias closes the distance between himself and Lena, his mind shifts between duty and something deeper. His focus sharpens. He doesn't have time to think about the implications of this protest or the people's anger. His job is clear. He must prevent chaos from spilling out of control. The monarchy cannot be challenged, especially not in public like this. But as he closes in, something stirs inside him, a flicker of doubt. Why is she running so hard? It's more than just the protest. It's as if she's fighting for something much greater than herself. His grip tightens on his baton, his breath remains steady, but a small voice in the back of his mind wonders, who is the real enemy here? But there's no time for contemplation. Elias is the hunter now, and Lena is the hunted. As she rounds the corner, he knows the chase is about to reach its breaking point. Lena pushes through the final stretch of the square, but the guards are right behind her. The alley is close, but so is Elias. The inevitable clash is moments away, the moment that will define the outcome of this protest and set the stage for everything that follows. Her lungs burn as she propels herself forward, her feet skimming over the cobblestones. Faster, faster. She can't stop now. The crowd around her is a blur of color and noise, but she barely registers them, her entire focus locked on the path ahead. Her body is a machine, every muscle working in perfect synchronization with her desperate will to escape. Adrenaline surges through her veins with every footfall, pushing her forward, each breath sharp and ragged as she cuts through the square like a streak of lightning. She ducks behind a stall piled high with fresh vegetables, knocking over a basket of tomatoes in her wake. The squelch of fruit underfoot mixes with the distant shouts of bystanders urging her on. Some yell for her to run faster, others scream curses at the guards, and a few begin recording the moment on their phones. Their voices blur together in a strange, distorted symphony of fear, excitement, and anger. But Lena doesn't hear them. Her focus is singular: escape. Her gaze flicks over her shoulder for just a second. Elias is right there. She sees him pushing through the crowd, his massive frame slicing through the sea of people. A relentless force of discipline and precision. His heavy armor clinks with each step, echoing through the square like the sound of impending doom. His eyes are locked on her, intense, focused, unyielding. He's closing the gap with terrifying efficiency. He's faster than she anticipated. Fear spikes in Lena's chest, but there's also something else, a deep resolve. This is it. She knows that if she's caught, everything she's worked for will be crushed under the weight of the monarchy's power. She has no choice but to keep moving, to keep fighting. She pushes harder, her breath coming in rapid gasps as she zigzags through the crowd, dodging fruit carts, overturned crates, and startled pedestrians. Her muscles scream in protest, but she doesn't slow down. She can hear him, Elias, getting closer with every step, his voice now a low growl of command. Stop! Lena's foot catches on the edge of a fountain, and in an instant, she's off balance, stumbling forward. For a split second, everything slows. Her hands reach for the stone edge of the fountain, fingers grazing the cold surface, but she doesn't quite make it. Her foot slips on the wet stone, and she crashes into the edge with a grunt, barely managing to steady herself before she falls face first into the water. A gasp ripples through the crowd. People scatter, momentarily unsure whether this is part of the spectacle or something far more dangerous. Some step back to avoid getting splashed, while others take out their phones, capturing the chaotic moment unfolding before them. This isn't just a protest anymore. It's becoming a spectacle. Lena pushes herself upright, soaked but undeterred. Her heart hammers in her chest, and her body feels like it's made of lead. But she doesn't have time to think about the pain. Elias is almost there. The sound of his boots is unmistakable, pounding the pavement just behind her. The square has shifted. People are forming an impromptu barrier, some in her favor, others supporting the guards. The crowd is no longer neutral. They're choosing sides, and Lena can feel it. Some are cheering for her, their voices rising in solidarity, urging her to keep running. Others are shouting at the guards, cursing them for chasing a brave soul. But some pull back, clearly afraid of getting caught up in the conflict. It's turning into chaos. Lena glances over her shoulder again. Elias is close. Too close. She feels his presence before she even hears him shout, "Stop!" His voice is like steel, cutting through the air, demanding obedience. But she doesn't stop. She can't stop. With a surge of determination, she pushes against the stone pillar next to the fountain, trying to break to the right. There's an alleyway ahead, a narrow escape. If she can just reach it, she might be able to lose them in the maze of side streets. But it's too late. As Lena pushes off from her trying to gain speed for one final burst, she feels a heavy hand grip her arm. Her breath catches, her body jerking as she's pulled back, unable to break free. She whips around, but it's not a stranger holding her. It's Elias. He stands there, chest heaving with exertion, his face inches from hers. His eyes are intense, and for a moment they lock. There's no longer any distance between them. This is the moment of truth. For a brief second, something flickers in Elias's gaze, something human, something uncertain, but the moment passes as quickly as it came. His grip tightens, and his voice is cold. "You're under arrest," leals a surge of defiance and anger that burns through the exhaustion, the fear. "No. This isn't how it ends." She twists in his grip, her body slick from the water, making it difficult for him to hold her. She pulls her arm free, staggering back a step, but Elias is quick. His hand shoots out again. But she's already moving, her heart pounding in her chest. Before she knows it, she collides with another guard emerging from the crowd, a towering figure blocking her escape. She spins, trying to dodge, but her vision begins to blur. The pounding in her chest grows louder, drowning out everything else. She's not sure how much longer she can keep this up. The chase, the tension, the heat of the crowd, it's all consuming her. The crowd grows restless, their calls becoming a roar of fury and support, but it only fuels the guards' like determination. The square is no longer a place of celebration, it has become a battlefield. And with every step, Lena cements herself as the symbol of something much bigger. As Elias closes in once more, baton raised, Lena knows there's no other choice. This isn't just a run for freedom anymore, it's a fight for her voice, for her cause. The moment of confrontation has arrived. But will she break free, or will the monarchy's power crush her before she has a chance to make her stand? In the blink of an eye, Elias is upon her. His hand shoots out with terrifying precision, gripping her arm and yanking her to the ground. The shock of the impact reverberates through the square. The sound of Lena's body hitting the cobblestones is sickening, a dull thud that sends ripples of tension through the crowd. For a moment, there is stunned silence. The cheers, the calls for solidarity, the frantic clamor, all of it dies down as the crowd watches in horrified disbelief. Phones hover in the air, but no one dares to speak. The atmosphere has shifted from chaotic to something far more dangerous. What started as a protest is now an all too real display of brute force. Lena gasps as her head cracks against the stones, pain blooming like fire through her skull. Her vision blurs, but she fights to stay conscious, to stay defiant. She's not just fighting for her life now, she's fighting for every voice that has ever been silenced. Elias stands above her, his face cold and unreadable. His gloved hand still grips her wrist, the pressure searing as it digs into her skin. He doesn't look like a man anymore. He is a symbol of everything she's fighting against. The monarchy's will, its suffocating power, embodied in a single, ruthless soldier. "You'll pay for this," Elias mutters, his voice flat yet almost mechanical. The words hang in the air between them, heavy with meaning. This is no longer just an arrest. It's a statement. He forces her to her feet with a sudden, brutal jerk, his grip like iron. For a second, she sways unsteadily before him, barely able to stand. His eyes lock onto hers. There is no pity, no empathy, only cold, calculated duty. His purpose is clear, to crush the rebellion no matter the cost. Lena's chest rises and falls in rapid, shallow breaths. Her body trembles with both rage and fear, but her eyes burn with defiance. She glares at Elias with a fierce, unwavering resolve. Her voice comes out hoarse but strong. "The people will rise. You can't stop us!" Her words cut through the tension like a knife. They are more than just a declaration. They are a promise. Her spirit, unbroken, refuses to be subdued by his brutality. The crowd, silent at first, feels the weight of her words. This is no longer just a protest. It is the moment the people have been waiting for. Elias's grip tightens on her wrist, his face contorting slightly in frustration. She is still defiant. She is still pushing back. His jaw clenches, and for a split second, Lena sees something flicker behind his cold eyes. Anger, perhaps even something deeper. But he has been trained for this. His entire life has been about maintaining control and forcing order. There's no room for hesitation, no room for weakness. He cannot afford to let her words take hold of the crowd. Not now. In a single, violent motion, he slams her back to the ground. The impact is brutal. Her body skids across the cobblestones, her skin scraping against the rough surface. A collective gasp echoes from the crowd. The weight of what's happening crashes down like a thunderclap. The royal guard, once revered for its precision and discipline, has now revealed its true face. It is not a protector of the crown. It is a weapon wielded to crush dissent. But what truly shatters the air around them is the next moment. Elias's hand shoots out and wraps tightly around Lena's throat. A low, collective sound rises from the crowd, a mixture of gasps, cries, and exclamations of shock. For a moment, time seems to freeze. The air grows thick with fear and disbelief. Lena's breath catches in her throat, her body thrashing beneath his grip as she fights for air. His fingers dig into her skin, cutting off her voice, but not her will. Her eyes never leave his. They are wide with rage and defiance, burning with the unshakable belief that even in this moment, she will not be silenced. The square has fallen into complete silence. The murmurs, cheers, and insults, all of it has ceased. All that remains is the sound of Lena's strangled breaths and the distant clink of Elias's armor as he holds her down, his face now mere inches from hers. His chest heaves with exertion, the tension in his body unmistakable, yet he does not relent. Lena's body trembles beneath his grip, her vision beginning to blur as the pressure on her throat intensifies. Every second is a battle, for air, for life. But even as her body weakens, her spirit remains unbroken. Her eyes lock onto his once more, and through the haze of pain and fear, she spits out her words, her voice raspy but resolute. "We're not afraid of you." Her words hang in the air, defiant and unyielding, louder than the roar of the crowd. It is not just a declaration, it is a challenge. And in that moment, something shifts. The royal guard, the enforcers of the monarchy, have revealed their true brutality. Yet Lena, despite everything, refuses to kneel. For Elias, the grip on her throat is more than just an act of subjugation. It is a test of power. But as he looks down at her, at the fierce fire in her eyes, something stirs within him. Is this what he's truly fighting for? To protect a system that thrives on fear? A faint crack of doubt forms, but it is quickly buried beneath the weight of his training. Elias takes a step back, his breath heavy, his hands trembling slightly as he releases his grip. Lena collapses to the ground, coughing violently, her chest heaving as she gasps for air, but the fire in her eyes never dims. The crowd watches in stunned silence. There is no applause, no cheers, only the stark reality of what has just unfolded. They have witnessed brutality firsthand, and it's clear this is not just a clash between one woman and one soldier. It is a battle between a people and the weight of an oppressive system. Lena's body may be bruised, her breath ragged, but her spirit remains unbroken. She has become a symbol of defiance, the spark that will ignite the hearts of others. Elias, on the other hand, stands with his head bowed for a brief moment, his body tense, his mind torn between duty and doubt. He knows the monarchy's power will not be undone by a single protester, but this act, this confrontation, it will linger in his mind long after the square has emptied. As Elias steps back, the sound of the crowd begins to swell once again, but it is different now. The cheers, the cries of outrage, they are for Lena, for her unyielding defiance. For the first time in years, the people have seen their oppression exposed, not through words or promises, but through this brutal act. Lena may have been broken, but the movement is just beginning. And for Elias, the cost of maintaining the monarchy's power is beginning to feel far heavier than he ever imagined. The square is thick with an unsettling silence. The once celebratory atmosphere has turned into a chilling stillness, like a breath held too long. Some onlookers are too stunned to react, while others whisper frantically to one another, disbelief and outrage mingling in their voices. The cameras are still rolling, the glaring light from phone screens casting an eerie glow on the faces of those recording. Lena is dragged away by two guards, her body limp, yet her defiance still burns in her gaze. Bloodied and bruised, but unbowed, her voice cuts through the silence. This will not be the end. Her words pierce the heavy air as if daring the monarchy to believe they can silence her. Even as she is pulled from the square, the crowd remains transfixed by her courage. Some stand frozen, unsure of what to do. Others begin to shout in her support, their voices rising into the increasingly volatile atmosphere. But no one can escape the gravity of this moment. It is a breaking point. The aftermath begins almost immediately. Social media erupts. Footage of the brutal altercation spreads like wildfire, seizing every platform and dominating news headlines. Clips of Lena being slammed to the ground, of Elias tightening his grip on her throat, are shared across the globe. Each view, each share, spreads the image of Lena's battered face and her unyielding defiance like a spark in a powder keg. Hashtags like Justice for Lena, End the Monarchy, and Resist the Crown begin trending worldwide. The images of her bloodied face and final words become an emblem of resistance, a visual declaration that the monarchy's power is no longer untouchable. The monarchy, which once basked in its unassailable image of grandeur and invincibility, now faces its first true crack. Lena's brutal treatment at the hands of the royal guard has exposed something far darker than they could have anticipated. What was once seen as discipline and protection has now become a symbol of terror. The actions of one soldier, one guard, have begun to unravel the very foundation of the royal family's power. Protests erupt across the city. In the streets, in front of government buildings, in plazas both large and small, people take to the streets. The world watches as Lena becomes a martyr, her suffering now a rallying cry for the oppressed. The images of her defiance are plastered across walls, flags, and social media as the rebellion spreads beyond the royal city, igniting a global movement for freedom and justice. Elias watches this too. He sees the faces of the people, their outrage, their desire for change, and it becomes undeniable. The monarchy's grip on power is no longer secure. Lena's sacrifice has sparked a fire that cannot be extinguished. Back at the palace, Elias sits alone in his quarters, watching the news coverage. The royal palace's grand, gilded walls suddenly feel empty, as if they are closing in on him. The cheers of the crowd, the protests, the anger in the streets, they're too loud for him to ignore. His chest tightens as he watches the footage of Lena's brutal treatment, her bloodied face, her words. His fists curl involuntarily as a sick feeling twists in his gut. He no longer knows what he feels. He's seen protest before. He's seen people suffer, and he's been a part of the machine that ensured order, often at the cost of human lives and dignity. But this feels different. This isn't the calm, controlled system he has always believed in. This isn't a simple matter of maintaining order. He watches the crowd in the square, the fury, the hope in their eyes, and something deep within him shifts. What is he really protecting? The crown? His loyalty to the monarchy? Or is it all a facade, a system built on lies and manipulation that only serves to keep people like him in the shadows, complicit in their silence? Elias turns off the TV, his eyes darkened by the weight of what he has just witnessed. The system he has devoted his life to has just shown its ugliest face, and in the wake of that, his heart is heavy with doubt. Was Lena right? Has he been nothing more than a pawn in a corrupt game, too blind to see the truth? And what now? He cannot stop hearing her words, echoing in his head like a drumbeat. This will not be the end. As the days pass, the momentum only grows. In cities across the empire, thousands take to the streets. The royal family's power is tested as the protests reach the palace gates. The images of Lena, her face battered but her resolve unbroken, continue to fuel the anger and the desire for change. Elias, now alone with his thoughts, cannot escape the growing conflict within himself. In the quiet moments, the weight of his actions presses down on him, and he begins to wonder if he has been part of something far darker than he ever imagined. But what does he do now? Does he remain loyal to the crown, to the system he has sworn to protect, or does he turn his back on it? Is it too late to make a choice? With each passing day, Elias feels the pull of something greater than the monarchy, something that does not rely on violence and submission, yet the consequences of his actions weigh heavily. Lena's martyrdom has ignited a movement, and the people will never forget what they have witnessed. The world will not allow the monarchy to remain unchallenged. For Elias, the true test is just beginning. A battle not only against the crown, but against his own beliefs, his own guilt, and his role in the machinery of oppression. The stage is set, the monarchy is in crisis, the protests continue to grow, and the royal guard's image has been shattered. Lena's fight has become a global movement, but her cause has only just begun. Elias stands at a crossroads, and his choice will determine not just his fate, but the fate of the empire itself. The question now is, will Elias stand with the crown, or will he join the rebellion? In the wake of the violent confrontation, the city has become a powder keg, and the fuse is burning fast. Protests are no longer sporadic or isolated. They have become a constant, a thundering tide that sweeps through the streets, crashing against the pillars of the royal establishment. The images of Lena, her bloodied face and fierce words, are now etched in the hearts of millions, a rallying cry for the disillusioned and oppressed. Across the city and even around the world, people march, demanding accountability. Signs reading, "Down with the monarchy, justice for Lena, and the people will rise," fill the air. In places like Royal Square, once a symbol of the monarchy's glory, chants for revolution echo against the stone walls. People, young and old, stand shoulder to shoulder, their unity breaking down the barriers of fear that have held them back for so long. Lena's movement is no longer just an idea, it is a force. The protests spread beyond the capital. In cities across the empire, workers, students, and even former supporters of the monarchy join the uprising. News outlets worldwide carry the story of Lena's martyrdom, spreading her message even to those outside the empire's reach. The monarchy's image, once unassailable, now seems fragile, a paper-thin facade beginning to crumble under the pressure of truth and outrage. Yet while the world around him is changing, Elias remains trapped in his own turmoil. The call to duty comes swiftly. Elias is summoned to the palace, expected to resume his position within the royal guard, to continue ensuring the monarchy's reign remains intact. His uniform feels heavier now, as though the weight of his choices is pressing down on him from all sides. Inside the palace, the royal family remains largely unperturbed by the unrest in the streets. They believe their power, built over centuries, will withstand this latest challenge. The protests, they think, will dissipate in time. The people will grow weary, the noise will fade, and they will remain in control. For now, they maintain their indifference, continuing with their celebrations, their affairs, and their insulated existence. But Elias can no longer ignore the truth. As he stands at his post, watching the growing protests from a distance, his thoughts betray him. The system he has devoted his life to protecting is not the bastion of justice he once believed it to be. Instead, it is a machine built on lies, greed, and oppression. A system that forces people like Lena to fight with nothing but their spirit, knowing full well that their sacrifices may never be enough. His gaze lingers on the crowd, on their unity, on their hope. And for the first time, he feels it. A longing for something better, a longing for the truth that the crown has hidden from him his entire life. Should he continue to stand guard over a monarchy that has revealed its true face, or should he stand with the people, the ones who have suffered under this system? The question haunts him, gnawing at him day after day, as he is forced to witness the growing power of the movement and the slow unraveling of the monarchy. Every time he sees footage of Lena's arrest, hears her defiant words, his certainty slips further away. How much longer can he remain loyal to a system that is now so clearly broken? Inside the palace, the royal family remains untouched by the unrest outside. Their lives continue as they always have, lavish, insulated from the world they have created. They hear the protests, of course, but dismiss them as mere noise. Their advisors assure them that the situation is temporary, that this is just another phase, another rebel movement that will fade once the people realize how futile it is to fight back. In their minds, the monarchy's control is absolute, and the people's anger is a passing storm. They do not see the cracks forming beneath their feet, but Elias does. One evening, as Elias watches the protesters on his screen, his mind races. The crown believes it can wait out the storm, but he knows better now. He has seen the spark of true rebellion in Lena's eyes and heard the rallying cries from the streets. The movement is not just a fleeting wave. It is the beginning of a tidal force. The monarchy cannot survive this storm. But the crown is not only blind to the growing revolution, it is also blind to the fact that Elias himself may be slipping away from them. His loyalty, once steadfast, is now a fragile thing, held together by the flimsy threads of duty and obligation. In these moments of reflection, he realizes something he hadn't before. The monarchy doesn't just protect the people, it protects itself above all else. And in that, it has failed them. As the protests grow, Elias's days become increasingly tense. He watches the rebellion from his post, feeling more like an observer than a participant. Every order to contain the crowds, every command to subdue protesters, feels more foreign to him than the last. In private moments, Elias begins to question everything. What is he really protecting? The crown's wealth and power, or the people who are struggling, fighting for a chance at justice? The guilt eats away at him. The very people he has been trained to suppress are the ones whose cries for help echo in his ears. The truth is becoming impossible to ignore. The whispers of dissent within the royal guard grow louder. There are murmurs of soldiers who feel the same as Elias, who have begun to question their role in maintaining a system that has turned against the people. Elias is not the only one who feels this shift, but he is the only one still standing in his uniform, still playing the role he was taught to play. He knows what he must do. The final confrontation is coming. Whether it will be with the crown or with himself, he does not yet know, but it is inevitable. The tipping point is near. The monarchy's power is now at a crossroads. The protests show no sign of slowing down, and the crown's grip on the people is weakening. Lena's death, or rather her defiance, has sparked a movement that cannot be extinguished. Elias has no choice but to face the truth of his own position. He can no longer be both loyal to the crown and to the people. His heart knows which side he is on, but the question remains, will he act on it? The choice at last is his own to make. Will Elias continue his life of duty to the crown, or will he join the people, turning against the system he once believed in? The spark has been lit, and there is no going back.